The first time anyone in Red Butte saw the giant, warrior limping down the dusty main road, dragging a blood-soaked leg and leaning on a broken spear, they thought the sunrise itself had sent him. He was too tall, too carved from raw muscle, too silent to be anything ordinary. The second time they saw him, when he placed his hand on Jacob Crowther's horse and whispered something no one else heard, they understood something terrible was coming. Jacob had woken before dawn, the way ranchers did when sleep didn't keep them. The desert sky was still blue-black and coyotes howled far off in the chaparral. He had been preparing to ride east to check on his herd when he spotted the warrior staggering across the wide flats. The man moved like someone stabbed through the bone, but refusing to die before sunrise. Jacob had seen Apache warriors before, strong men, disciplined, proud, but nothing like this giant. His shoulders were broad as barn doors, and each breath made his chest rise like a blacksmith's bellows. Yet the man was failing, his body swaying, his right leg dragging a long ribbon in the dirt behind him. Jacob moved toward him without thinking. "Hey, easy, partner," he said softly, raising his palms. "You're hurt bad. Sit down before you fall down." The giant didn't fall, didn't blink, didn't even seem to hear the words. His eyes were fixed not on Jacob but on Jacob's horse, Dustcatcher, a dark chestnut gelding with the calmest temperament Jacob had ever known. Without warning, the warrior collapsed forward, catching himself on the horse's saddle horn. Dustcatcher startled but didn't bolt. Jacob reached out and steadied the giant by the shoulder. His fingers barely wrapped halfway around the man's deltoid. "You need a doctor," Jacob muttered. "Or a miracle." The warrior lifted his head at last. His voice came low, rasped, almost broken. "Horse, I need your horse." Jacob blinked. "You can barely stand." The giant shook once as though trying to clear the dark around his vision. "Give me the horse." Jacob could have refused. He could have told the warrior to lie down, to let the town doctor stitch him up. But there was something in the giant's voice, an urgency, that felt older than the desert, older than the mountains behind them. Something ancient. So Jacob swallowed and nodded. "Take him," he said quietly. "Dustcatcher's yours." The warrior stared into Jacob's eyes a long, unreadable moment, then nodded once. Jacob helped him mount, though the giant hardly needed help, more like balance. With a grunt of pain, he pulled himself upright. His blood smeared across the horse's flank. Then he muttered a single word, something in Apache Jacob didn't understand, and kicked the horse's sides. Dustcatcher took off at a hard gallop toward the northern ridge. Jacob stood watching the outline shrink into the desert heat waves, thinking he'd likely never see the horse again, thinking he'd probably never know who the giant was or why he needed that horse, thinking faintly that the dawn seemed to dim a little as the rider vanished. But the real strangeness didn't begin until the next morning. At sunrise, someone pounded on Jacob's barn door with enough force to shake dust from the rafters. Jacob stumbled out of bed, boots unlaced, shirt half-buttoned, a rifle in one hand. When he stepped outside, he froze. Dustcatcher stood in front of him, clean, brushed, saddled, without a single drop of blood on him. And next to the horse stood the giant warrior, no limp, no wound, no weakness left. The rising sun cast fire across his shoulders, making him look like he had stepped out of a legend. Jacob gaped. "You, how?" The giant lifted one hand. "Your horse carried me. I returned him." Jacob shook his head. "You were dying." "Dying is not dead," the warrior said simply. Jacob stared, trying to find reason in any of this. "Who are you?" The warrior looked toward the mesa ridge where the sun was climbing higher. "My name is Tahoma." Jacob had heard that name once, spoken quietly around campfires, carried in rumors. A warrior of impossible stature, a guardian of lands that predated every ranch and railroad, a man people said could tear open chains with his bare hands, if the stories were true. Tahoma stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Jacob's boots. "I owe you for your horse." "I wasn't expecting anything," Jacob said honestly. "You will receive something anyway." Jacob waited. Tahoma did not blink. "I will use your barn," Tahoma said, "as a vault." Jacob nearly choked on his own spit. "A vault? For what?" "Gold." Jacob felt the morning spin sideways. "Gold?" Tahoma scanned the horizon, as though measuring threats only he could see. "The mountains burned last night. Men came hunting what is not theirs. They will come again. I needed the horse to bury what I carry." I hid the rest before the fire reached us. But I must move the last of it. So I will use your barn? Jacob should have refused. Should have said something rational like, my barn isn't a bank, sir. But something in the giant's tone told him refusal wasn't an option. Not because Tahoma threatened him, he didn't, but because the warrior was in the middle of something huge, dangerous, and far beyond anything Jacob wanted to be part of. Still, Tahoma had returned Dustcatcher, returned him groomed, returned him alive. Jacob exhaled slowly. Fine, use the barn. But you need to tell me what kind of trouble is coming. Tahoma gave him a long look, the kind that shoots before speaking. The giant entered the barn without waiting for permission. Jacob followed cautiously, rifle still in hand. Tahoma crouched near a stack of hay, brushing the floor with his fingers until he found a wooden knot in the planks. With one hand, but at one eye, he pried the entire board free. Beneath it lay a cloth-wrapped bundle the size of a saddlebag. Tahoma lifted it and tossed it onto the hay. The weight of it struck the ground with a metallic thud. Jacob's breath hitched. That's gold in there? Part of it, Tahoma said. Jacob stepped back. He didn't want to be near anything that made a sound like that. Tahoma, he whispered, who is after you? Men who don't believe the earth belongs to anyone but them. Jacob swallowed. How many? Tahoma continued working, shifting crates aside. Dozen, maybe 2 dozen. But men chasing gold grow more like wolves than people. The number will rise. Jacob's stomach sank. You hiding that in my barn? Doesn't that put me in danger? Tahoma paused. Yes. Jacob blinked. You could have lied. I owe you, Tahoma said simply. Jacob rubbed his forehead. Is there any part of this that ends well for me? Tahoma thought a long moment. Yes, he said at last. If you do exactly what I say. Jacob didn't like the sound of that. What do I need to do? Stay alive. The trouble arrived faster than either expected. Just after noon, rider silhouettes appeared on the far ridge. Dust rose behind them like a wildfire. Jacob counted at least 10 men, maybe 12. Rifles glinted in the sunlight. Tahoma stood beside him, arms crossed, unbothered. That them? Jacob muttered. Yes. What do we do? We wait. We wait for what? They must choose whether they fear me or want the gold more? Fear and greed rarely walk together. Jacob's pulse thundered. You think they'll just ride away? No, Tahoma shifted slightly. But they will hesitate. That hesitation gives you time to run if you are wise. I'm not running from my own barn, Tahoma. Tahoma glanced down at him. Then you are not wise. Jacob gripped his rifle tighter. Maybe not. But I'm not a coward. Tahoma actually smiled, barely, but it was something. Then stand behind me, he said. You are brave, but your bravery will break easily. The riders thundered closer until they circled the ranch yard. Their leader, a sharp-jawed man with a scar across his cheek, rode forward. Crowther, he shouted. We're looking for a very large Apache. Came through this way. You seen him? Jacob swallowed. Tahoma didn't move. Jacob spoke carefully. Saw a rider go past at sunrise. Didn't look too close. The scarred man smirked. Funny. That horse of yours looks awful clean for a sunrise chase. He's always clean, Jacob lied weakly. Best horse in the county. The leader's eyes narrowed. He glanced at the barn. What's in there? Hay, Jacob said. Mostly. The leader lifted his rifle, pointing straight at Jacob's chest. Step aside. Before Jacob could answer, a shadow darkened the doorway of the barn. Tahoma stepped out slowly. The riders reacted instantly. Guns rising, horses shifting, tension cracking the air like lightning. But none of them fired, not yet. The leader's face paled. You, he whispered. Tahoma walked forward until he stood at Jacob's side. The giant looked down at the leader the way a mountain might look down at a river. Leave, Tahoma said. You got something that belongs to us, the leader spat. No, Tahoma answered. I have something you want. Nothing you deserve. The leader jerked his chin. Boys? Half the rifles cocked at once. Jacob's blood turned to ice. Tahoma stepped forward, just one step, but it changed everything. His shadow engulfed the riders closest to him. His voice boomed across the yard. If you shoot, he warned, none of you will see another sunrise. Someone's horse backed up. Someone else cursed. The riders wavered. The leader snarled, Fire! But no one fired. No one dared. Tahoma didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. The leader looked behind him, realizing his men were frozen. "You cowards," he hissed. Then he swung his rifle toward Tahoma. Jacob didn't think, he acted. "Tahoma!" he shouted. The giant moved faster than Jacob thought a man could move. His arm swept sideways, knocking the barrel away just as it fired. The shot ricocheted into the dirt inches from Jacob's boots. Before the leader could recover, Tahoma grabbed him by the collar and lifted him off his horse like a rag doll. The leader screamed. "You chase what is not yours," Tahoma growled. "Tell the others what you saw. Tell them the mountain does not fall." He threw the man, literally threw him into the dirt. Hard, the other riders, panicked, wheeling their horses, bolting across the desert in a desperate scramble of dust and fear. The leader scrambled after them, coughing blood, crawling until he could limp after his horse. In a matter of seconds, the ranch yard was silent again. Jacob stood trembling. Tahoma turned to him. "Your barn is safe now." Jacob exhaled shakily. That was unbelievable. Tahoma nodded. "Fear is stronger than bullets." Jacob wiped sweat from his brow. "What now?" "What about the gold?" "It will remain here," Tahoma said. "No one will search this place again. They will speak of a giant guarding it, and they will not return." Jacob hesitated. "Tahoma, why trust me with all this?" The giant looked toward the rising sun, then back at Jacob. "Because when I needed a horse," he said quietly, "you gave it." Jacob swallowed hard. "And now what happens to you?" "I guard what must be guarded," Tahoma replied. "But if danger returns, I will come back." Jacob nodded slowly. "Then my barn stays open to you." Tahoma placed a massive hand on Jacob's shoulder. "And my war stays far from your door." With that, the giant walked to the horizon, leaving no footprints behind him, as though the desert itself swallowed each step. Jacob stood alone in the morning light, Dustcatcher nudging his shoulder. The barn behind him filled with secrets worth more than any man's life. He understood then that some debts went deeper than gold, and some sunrises changed everything.